tests are for nerds, not quarterbacks. We'll go full Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance with some huge names and calculated combine comments coming quickly? We've got all that and more. I'm Jason Fitz, and it's time for Inside Coverage. Welcome to Inside Coverage, part of the Zero Blitz family, where we dive into the how and why on all things NFL. She's Jori Epstein, Yahoo Sports senior NFL reporter. I can learn how to talk tonight. I'm Jason Fitz, and we are hanging out. It's the first time we've gotten to hang out since we were in Vegas, just raging. For anyone that doesn't we were just raging. It was just absolute wild parties, or it was all work the whole time, which is more along the lines. I started this whole intro by saying tests are for nerds, not quarterbacks. That line was just for you, Jori, because I am 100% sure that you got A's on all the tests. See? I knew this coming in.
Big fan. Tests are fun. I like challenges, like mental challenge, physical challenge. You give me a challenge, I am in, and a test is a challenge. I want something that's going to force me to be my best.
Okay, see, this is where we are. So, look, we'll get to everybody calm down. We're going to get into some great stuff on the combine. We're going to get to some great stuff on free agency. But first, I'm going to tell you a story, Jori. A story you didn't ask for, okay? But I'm going to take you all the way back to my senior year in high school. I took Latin my senior year in high school, right? And we had this scrapbook that you had to spend all year getting all of this information out, from all the different clippings and everything. And then you had to translate all these things. It was a year-long project. It was a huge part of our grade. I started it the night before it was due. And, several of my friends that were like you and loved tests told me that I was an idiot and I was going to be terrible. This is how I did everything. I always waited to the absolute last second.
I'm not saying I prepare in advance just because I love it, but continue.
So I turn in my scrapbook, and the valedictorian of our class kindly reminds me as I turn it in that it's going to suck. So you fast forward about a week later, and the Latin teacher comes in, and she's like, "Hey, I just want to point out some of the grades." And she did all of this very publicly. And at the end, she holds up my scrapbook, and she says, "There was one scrapbook that was so good, I'm taking it to the national convention this year to show everybody how scrapbooks should be done." See, I'm not into tests. I'm not into preparing. But if you ask me to cram a ton of information in a short amount of time, that's where I thrive. So, I'm more the pop quiz guy. Give me midnight. Tell me that I got to know something the next day. I'm great. But by noon, I've forgotten it all. That's why you're a great student and I'm just a schmuck.
I'm definitely with you on just having a little bit of time because I work way better on deadlines. It's not that I just procrastinate. It's that my brain constantly wants to do 10 things at once. And so I need the deadline to force the sense of urgency to make that one thing the priority. But one of the things I did the last week while we were not talking about football, or I was not talking about football, is actually read a book. I haven't finished reading it, but reading it. And it's all about memory. And it's talked a lot about how does that allow the cramming and the different ways we do and don't remember things. So I have 10 gazillion thoughts about that, but I don't know that that's really what our listeners came to hear.
No, I had a friend for years that told me that they were going to write on my tombstone, "Why do it today if I can do it tomorrow?" But I think also at the same time, to be fair, I have a tireless work ethic, as you know. I can grind all day long. It's just that I don't want to deal with that till I have to deal with it. And then when I have to deal with it, I want to deal with all of it. That's just why
we're grinding. We're just grinding on something else.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So let's get to the news around the league. By the way, did you go anywhere fun for your vacation while some of us were still working tirelessly around the clock? Did you put your feet in the sand? Did you watch Star Wars from beginning to end? Did we do anything fun?
I honestly hiked a lot, and I am very pro hiking. So outdoors hiking, read a book, that's what I need. Did not listen to anything football during that stretch and was very happy about it.
Can we just reveal to the world, by the way, you're 2'3". You're tiny. All right. You are a tiny individual.
2'4".
Okay. Sorry. 2'4". And we walked from Mandalay Bay to where we had to go to for a meeting that we were walking to together. And you were like, "Let's just walk." I'm in pretty good shape at this point in my life. I run every day. And I still found myself winded as I was trying to walk. I have much longer legs than you do. And you were just going the whole way. So I
walk really fast.
One of your friends at the time was like, "Hey, everybody's going on a hike. Feel free to join." I was like, the hell I will. The chance that I'm going to try and hike with somebody that I just couldn't walk on level ground with is zero. It's below zero. I'm not going to I cannot imagine hiking with these. And I'm just sitting here dying the whole way.
And that day we were running that hike too, which was a little bit of a bold move, but we did it.
Yeah, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. All right, let's get into the news around the league, and it starts, as always, right now with Justin Fields. I feel like Stone, producer extraordinaire, can just clip off Justin Fields because every week everybody's going to be talking about it. But we're talking about it for valid reason here. He went on the St. Brown Brothers podcast and they asked him a very difficult question, obviously, that they get to ask him because they're teammates, about unfollowing the Bears on social media. We've got it here. Stone will play it for you. This is, rather than paraphrase it, we'll let you hear exactly how it went down with Justin Fields on the podcast.
Since we're here, hold on.
But I mean, we're not comparing.
No. Since we're here,
all right, come on.
What's with the unfollow with the Bears? What's up with that?
Man, bro, I'm glad we're talking about it because why do people take social media so serious? Like,
but like, why are you unfollowing the Bears?
Like, I still mess with the Bears. It's not. I'm just trying to take a little break. I unfollow the Bears and the NFL, bro. I'm not just trying to have football on my timeline. Like, I know y'all mess with a girl, EQ, especially you. Just because you don't follow the girl on IG don't mean you're not messing with her.
That's true. That's true. That's facts. That's fact.
Oh, so you're saying you mess with the Bears more now that you unfollow them?
Man, it's not even like that.
Okay.
It's something that I don't want to see in my timeline. I'm about to go on vacation. I don't want to see no football. And guess what?
Just get a little away for a little bit.
It's either keep Fields. We want Fields. It's either draft Caleb. So it's like, bruh, man, I'm tired of hearing the talk. I just want it to be over.
All right, Jori, I have a lot of thoughts. I want to get your thoughts on this, but I got to start here because I think everybody's missed one important thing. People love his analogy of, oh, you're messing with the girl. Just because you don't follow her on Instagram doesn't mean you're messing with her. What he's wrong about is if you are already in a relationship with a girl and then you unfollow her on social media, you think that's going to go, like, you think that you're in a relationship, everything's good, and suddenly you press the unfollow button and you ain't going to get a question from somebody? Like, that's the part of his analogy that's absolutely lost, because he's in a relationship with the Bears and they're going through a little tough patch and he just unfollowed her. So, like, I don't see how we can let that skate.
If I didn't have this like expensive mic that our boss has got, I would drop it right now. But I feel like that would not go over well. So just imagine my imaginary mic drop, because I think you're totally right. I think that what's interesting about this is he's basically being like, just because you make one public move doesn't mean it's the same in private. But the whole point is we are interpreting this in public. He is a public figure. He knows that any move is going to be interpreted in the public. And if he's still messing with them, well, then why bother making this public move? Also, has the man never heard of the mute button? I totally understand that he doesn't want to be seeing this news all the time. First of all, you can stay off social media. That he's going on vacation. He should probably stay off it anyway. I just think that there are so many other ways to go about this. This was clearly an intentional move, and it was clearly an intentional move that he knew would be publicly interpreted and perhaps even wanted to be publicly interpreted, whether that was to give a slight to the Bears or whether he's trying to drum up a trade market for himself. And I think all of those are fair, but like to play like, oh, me? Like you think just because I'm doing this one thing that reflects all of my actions? No, we're not saying this reflects all of your actions, Justin. We're saying that you made a very clear decision you knew would be interpreted.
I'll go back to a long time ago. I was in a band that at the time was opening for Kenny Rogers. And Kenny Rogers was one of the most iconic people I've ever been on tour with. I learned more in the year that we did shows with him than I think I did from any other act. But we've all heard the phrase perception is reality. I understand that. But I was talking to Kenny one night, and I'll never forget this. He said, hey, perception is the only reality that matters because you helped create it and now you have to live in it. And there's an ownership difference in the way that he said that really hit me. And to me, well, we can agree or disagree with the statement. Justin Fields has to accept the fact that the perception that he's now living in, his reality, was created by his own actions. The fact that he did this, he's been in the league long enough to know that who he follows matters. He's been in the league long enough to know that what he does matters. He's been in the league long enough to know that this was going to create conversation. So to your point, could have muted, could have deleted social media off his phone. If he chooses not to do those things, he could have found other ways to not acknowledge the Bears. But he had to know that the minute he unfollowed the Bears, even if he unfollowed the NFL too, it was going to create a conversation. And now he can't come around and be like, oh, why do you guys care so much? Well, I mean, we care so much for the exact reasons you knew we would care.
I also love the well, if I unfollow this girl, but I also unfollow that girl, then I think that it's okay. No, then delete your social media if you want to have that perception.
I think all of this speaks to right now, the toughest thing to say sometimes is nothing at all. And it's the best thing. There's not this is unfortunate for Justin. Like I genuinely feel for Justin Fields because I'm sure he has a lot he wants to get off his chest. And there's very little win in doing any of that because he's right. He doesn't know his future and he doesn't control his future. So if he comes out and goes scorched earth with the Bears, that's not going to make anything better. And if he comes out and says all the right things, it's not going to change what happens. So he's left sort of flopping in the wind. And I get why that sucks. But you have to understand that even when that sucks, any action is going to be overanalyzed. So, short of the Bears coming out and making a very public statement that I don't think they would make before the draft anyway, that Justin Fields is our quarterback, short of that happening, nothing in his life is going to change between now and April because he's not going to get clear answers from anybody. There's no way they're going to trust him with even the real information because they don't want it to get out for their own trade value, right? So, I just think he's going to be left sort of standing at this point, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Right. I think you make two great points. One is that he didn't unfollow them in a month or right before the draft. He unfollowed them now when there's a lot of time left before we might see a move. We could see a move sooner, but not necessarily. And then the other thing is that, yes, the best thing to do is say nothing at all. Let's get Justin a journal. Let's take him axe throwing. Let's give him all of these different ways, like maybe punch a pillow. There are a lot of ways we can get our feelings out. That said, if he was going to make a move and he was like, look, this sucks. This is not fun. They didn't give me the right pieces around me. And now I'm the one who's having to leave because of it. Then I do think there's a case to be made that maybe this is a good thing. If he needed to do something publicly because he felt like my pride's at stake, and especially as a quarterback, your reputation matters, you're a leader, all of that. I think that a team would hold it against him if he came out and went scorched earth. A team's not holding against him who he follows and unfollows on social media. And I don't even really think they're going to see it as a sign of immaturity. I don't think they care. And so in that regard, maybe he did this well. Maybe he was just enough that it'll placate him. He can talk about it in a funny way, in a humorous way on this podcast, and then go along. And now let's take him axe throwing to make sure that the next thing doesn't happen.
As a reporter, though, and that's what let's be real. I'm just a guy in front of a mic. You're a reporter. As a reporter, would it not have been smarter for him, if we're going to play out the right way to do this, to put out a statement the day that all this is happening and saying, hey, my love for Chicago and the Bears runs deep, but the energy being put towards my future is toxic and difficult for my mental health. As a result, I'm going to unfollow the NFL and the Chicago Bears to uncloud my timeline. If you go proactive, that's just the world we live in. If you're one step ahead and you walk out and you're like, yeah, sorry, this is going to happen, and here's exactly why. Does it not end the questions?
Does that not feel like overkill? He didn't go egg someone's house. He unfollowed them on social media.
But if he really doesn't want people to freak out about it, I don't
think he cares. I think he knows people are freaking out about it, but I don't think he's oh, I really regret this. Yes, that's you fair. Could have.
Fair.
Look, I think the bigger question is, who is he trying to win over here? Is he trying to win over the fans? Is he trying to win over his next fan base? Is he trying to win over NFL teams? I think if you want to buy yourself favors, Lamar Jackson probably did the thing that seemed to win him the most empathy from the fans when he's Baltimore, I love you, but I asked for a trade because they're not giving me what I want. The way he just tweeted it out, I will say that when Lamar spoke directly to the fans, then that seemed to really resonate. I also will say, as a reporter who is constantly threatened by athletes talking directly to fans and not going to us, I think that they should go through Yahoo Sports. And if they give a statement to Yahoo Sports, we could do a video interview. We could do a written article. I think that is the best way to be proactive here.
No, there's no self-interest in that statement at all, by the way. That is absolutely true. By the way,
help me.
It's amazing. It's amazing how that works. And just check out Yahoo Sports for all of the athletes talking directly to us that will come from this. This is perfectly done by you.
Yeah, if you're listening out there and you have a message, Jori.epstein@yahooinc.com, Yahoo Inc. Okay, continue.
Okay, now you've thrown that out there. You're going to get so many. All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, I think this one is interesting to me because the Combine is coming up next week. You and C-Rob will be there, so we'll have plenty of reporting from it on next week's episode. I do think it's interesting because Athletes First, which represents CJ Stroud, has advised all clients to skip the Combine's cognitive testing. I want to remind people that last year, going into the draft, there was a lot of conversation about the fact that CJ Stroud scored poorly on the test and then came in and absolutely whooped at the NFL level. It was an interesting conversation because last year, everybody was trying to figure out. I think we forget, that people tried to have their questions about CJ Stroud. For whatever he did at the college level, there were people that weren't 100% sure. And this cognitive test became part of this negative conversation about CJ, whether it was the way he processes information, all these stupid things that turned out to not have anything to do with it. So I don't really blame Athletes First for saying, hey, number one, we've proven that this test is useless to actual success on the field. Number two, I'm not going to put any of my guys through it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I believe Athletes First has enough power to take down this test if they want to. They'll have to decide if they want to take the test down. And I mean, like, topple it, like, fight it versus not actually just, like, remove it. Or if they want to say, like, we're not doing it, you guys do what you want. But, like, that matters. They have a lot of top clients. They have a lot of quarterbacks in particular. And you could say that the way that the quarterback reads the field is most important of every position. I think that's probably accurate. What I think is interesting is that Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network did a call today, and there were a lot of interesting takeaways. But one of them that stood out is when he was talking about CJ Stroud, he said he had not seen anybody process the field as clearly and as confidently as CJ Stroud did in their first year in the league, like ever. Like, and again, I know a bunch of us know that, but to me, when I hear someone like Jeremiah say it, who I just really trust the way he evaluates, I think that's fascinating. And I think it's not just that this test was like a little bit off or that it was unhelpful or that it was neutral. It was misdirection if you were to follow it, assuming that the report was accurate about CJ Stroud's score. And so I think we struggle with this idea. Like, I was asking Jeremiah today, like, how have you seen quarterback evaluation evolve over the last 10 years? Like, what's different now versus then? And he was saying, well, like, because you look at the Super Bowl and you have Brock Purdy on one side and Patrick Mahomes on the other. And they came from the first round, a premier first round pick, and then you have the obvious last pick of the draft, Mr. Irrelevant. And both of them end up in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're the same level of quarterback, but they did both take their teams to the Super Bowl. And so I think then you start to ask yourself, like, what are we valuing? Where are the common threads generally? And DJ said he's just hearing a lot of teams who say, like, experience in college and readiness and being the more that is thrown at them, the better. Like, that is increasingly becoming a premium in the evaluation process. It's not just about, like, the upside, like how tantalizing it is, the traits. Like, yeah, for sure that matters, but that's always mattered. And I think the experience is starting to catch up to it. And so I think that what we struggle with a test like this is that a test like this is such a specific piece of information. And it's also, like, no guarantee. It's not, here's what they played. Like, at some point, just look at the film. But we have this process where we have analytics now. We have digital media. There's more accessibility to film than ever before, different ways to watch film. And so teams are constantly trying to keep up. But sometimes more information is not better information. And they need to still use all of this as ancillary supporting evidence rather than the main thing. And the last thing I'll say about this is I think that what will be interesting is if Athletes First makes this decision, one, do other big agencies like a Clutch or like a Clutch or a CAA, are they going to advise their clients similarly? And how much of a role does an NFL team have in it? Because you might not have your guy just take it preemptively, but what if an NFL team says, like, hey, I want you to take it? Are you really going to tell your client, do not take this, when a team tells you to take it? Because what if that team has two guys and one of them's willing to take it and they view that? I mean, again, do I think that's going to, like, really make or break a draft position? No. But do I think that you're risking something when there's already such a competitive field? I do think it's a risk.
I love your very middle statement there that I think is an important one of watch the film. And, one thing that always stood out to me when I first started covering the draft was if you go in and you just talk to guys that don't cover the NFL, they cover college football, and you go in and you ask questions of the guys that cover college football, you get a real sense of who these players are up and down. And then you can apply that from the film that they've watched to whether or not you think it works in the NFL. I think one of the I don't want to say problems, but one of the things that makes draft evaluation tougher and tougher is you have a million people out there that are cramming so much film in so little time and then putting out snap judgments, as opposed to somebody that's been covering college football for 15 years and has seen every snap of this guy's career. I just think it hits different. And it's one of the reasons why I always consider myself sort of an aggregator of information. When you talk about guys, instead of sitting here, when Will Levis last year was being rumored to climb all the way up to the first overall pick by some people, all you had to do was talk to the 10 or 15 people that was around constantly Will Levis, and you got a real sense of, okay, he's probably an early second round pick, and these are the things he's good at. These are the things he's not good at. Like the college guys have a better sense of all of that. I think what's interesting is that we get into over analysis in so much of what we're seeing. And this cognitive test is a perfect example of it. Watch the film on CJ Stroud. Go back. Like, I was there for the Ohio State Georgia game where he just absolutely crushed him. And I think there was the 6th game I'd been at his that year. And you start to look at these things in person and you say, my God, like, there are no questions. I was standing on the sideline when Joe Burrow won a national championship. And I looked at one of my buddies. We'd seen several games that year. And I kept saying, this guy, why are we not talking about him the way we talk about Andrew Luck? Like, I think sometimes what happens in the draft process and at the combine is we fall in love with attributes more than just what a player has actually done. And that's the hardest thing to avoid in Indy. And it's going to be interesting because the other thing that I think is really important and different right now to what you said earlier, these guys are older and they've played more football than most classes because of COVID. That gives you more tape on anybody. Like, you go on one date with somebody, you might fall 4 dates with somebody, you think it's great. By the time you get to 20th date, maybe it's not as good. I think film sometimes is the same way. Like, when you have more and more and more, you really get to see who Bo Nix is as a quarterback, right? Like, teams are going to get over obsessed with the interview, but I would just challenge that there's more film than ever on these guys. Just go watch the film and figure out, like, does this guy fit in my system?
Right. And I think it's hard because Daniel Jeremiah was actually talking today about how the hardest thing to evaluate is how the guy is seeing the field. And so then you're saying, like, how is he being coached to see it? What is his read? Like, what's the system telling him? It's not just about how he's thinking. It's about how he's thinking within the confines of the system. Does he have his protection? Does he have the right pass catchers? Does he have a play caller who's calling the plays in a right order in the best way? I mean, is his play caller setting him up for success? And so I actually think a bigger obstacle to the draft, I don't know about a bigger obstacle, but I would say one of the things that I think is actually interrupting the draft process is that guys are getting set up with agencies who are so massively overcoaching them. And maybe you say, well, hey, if you're going to have to study for a test in the real league and you're going to have to, like, get the playbook, then you're studying for the test for the combine and it works. Like, great. Like, Fitz, we already talked about what it means to cram. But to me, and I talked about this at the Senior Bowl when I interviewed Michael Penix Jr. and he actually answered my question when I asked him, like, what was he breaking down for a team on film and what kind of questions were they asking him in their Senior Bowl interviews? And he's like, well, is it 6? I think it was like a drop 6, whatever. He got into the entire coverage, what his route was on one side for the receiver, what it was on the other, how it changed based on his protections, how it changed based on what the defender did. Here's what he had to read from the linebacker. I mean, he had this whole level of detail and the clip kind of went viral. I didn't realize at the time that apparently he doesn't usually give detailed answers because, like, I don't watch college football. So I just think it was interesting because it kind of reminded me of, like, we've gotten into this, like, super sanitized, super staged, super scripted cycle of the draft evaluation process. And if I were teams, I would want to know, is there any way to make this more authentic? Like, stop expecting guys to have the perfect answers to the test and more try and get them to, like, get in the moment. And I know in some of these interviews, they are having conversations where it's like, hey, you don't know what's going to be asked. And so you can't be prepped for it. But I feel like there are probably ways in which the combine prep not only does a disservice to the team's ability to evaluate, but also a disservice to the players. I'm probably going to have agents who are not so happy about this, but I think it's true.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And the process is in some ways broken because one thing that is just undeniable is that the draft is a crapshoot, right? And I would like to believe that there are 32 head coaches. I'd like to believe that most of them are incredibly qualified and know more football than most of us will ever know in our lives. I would like to believe that 32 GMs are the same way. The people that have come up through the scouting world, they know more than, Twitter X is ever going to know about these things. They live it, they eat it, they breathe it, they feed their families doing it. How do they get it wrong so often? And anytime your accuracy rate is that low when it comes to something like, look, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on a lot of things, but I'll go back to music. Like, if you had me stand on the side of a stage and watch a festival all day and ask me at the end of the day to figure out if guitar players were good or bad, doesn't matter the kind of music they're playing. I've been doing that my whole life. I can look around and say, yeah, he's pretty good. He stinks. He's being covered up by tracks. He knows what he's doing. Like, you should be able to do that. And if you put 20 of us on the side of the stage, we'd all be able to do that. I cannot for the life of me figure out how so many GMs, coaches, and scouts get it so wrong when it comes across the board with first rounders, second rounders, third round, like all across the draft. It's so impossible for teams to get it right. It alarms me that they've never sat back and said, how do we make this process cleaner so that more teams can be more successful in the draft? So with that being said, we're going to make some matches. We're going to be free agent millionaire matchmakers. We are about to make teams and dreams come true. We're going to do that when we come back. It is time to play Celebrity Millionaire Matchmaker. That's the working title. It is the working title. Jori and I are about to be matchmakers. Let me be clear. We are matching top free agents or top potential free agents, people that may be on the move. We are going to match them with where we want them to go. Not necessarily reporting it. Like, I know this is a show based on reporting. C-Rob's out. When C-Rob's out, we can just get weird. When he's gone, we can do whatever we want. So we're going to get weird, and we're going to decide where each of these prospective movements should end up. And I should never say movements like that. It just feels weird the whole way. So we're going to be Celebrity Millionaire Matchmakers here. I'll give you a player. We'll figure out where we want them to end up. Are you ready, Jori?
I am ready, and I think that these players should get ready because they're about to have the best match they've ever received.
Okay. I'm color me intrigued. All right, let's start with Kirk Cousins because every conversation has to start with quarterbacks so that people listen and they click. Kirk Cousins coming off of an Achilles injury. So for the sake of this conversation, Jori, we're going to pretend that Kirk has magically healed. He got, he just got kissed by the Achilles gods. A-Rod went out there. Aaron went out there and made sure he was healthy. He's healthy. While you figure it out, I'll give you a dream scenario for Kirk Cousins. And we're not factoring salary cap in here. I think if Kirk Cousins wanted to go somewhere where he could immediately have impact, he goes to Denver. Hear me out. He gets to play with Sean. He gets to play for Sean Payton. And Sean Payton gets a veteran quarterback that can sort of run all of this offense through him. And it buys them time to figure out what they're doing. Like the Broncos don't have a viable answer. So in this moment, Kirk Cousins has made so much money. He decides he just wants to play for vet minimum. Doesn't matter. They bring in Kirk Cousins. They get themselves out of salary cap hell. He gets to play for Sean Payton for a year, has a glorious time in Denver, enjoys the cold weather there, and goes into the AFC West. That's sort of a dream scenario for him, I think.
Okay, I like that, especially because it's so important to Peyton that he has someone who can process quickly at the line, that I feel like Kirk definitely meets that criteria. I'm going to send him to Pittsburgh. I know that like Mason Rudolph did well at the end of the year, but I feel like I think Kirk is an overachiever relative to what people think he is. And I also think Mike Tomlin is clearly that. And I just would love to see like their stars collide and like, what can we do now? And like, how can he kind of like teach everyone else on the offense? It doesn't necessarily have to be for 10 years. He doesn't have to be your long-term answer. I don't know how many more years he even wants to play, but I think that you put him there, you let him sort of be an adult in the room in the offense that I think really needs an adult in the room. And I think that the Steelers are now more competitive in the AFC than they were AFC North than they were before.
I love that. And I don't really know what the right answer is for the Steelers as I say Kirk Cousins somewhere else because, you know, I mean, look, Justin Fields isn't part of this conversation. We started the show talking about Justin Fields. If I had a dream location for Justin Fields, it's probably Atlanta. So I'm not sure who the dream person is, but man, the Steelers got to find somebody because like Kenny Pickett is not the answer. You got to find somebody. So I like that a lot. All right. Next on the list, the biggest name in free agency that's not a quarterback for most people, Chris Jones, obviously coming off of a Super Bowl that you could argue he helped win. So dream destination for Chris Jones. I'll say here, Jori, that in my mind, the dream destination for him is that he stays where he is. I just think what happens in that defense with Spags is incredible. If you're Kansas City, you know you can lose a lot, but you don't want to lose that piece. Like it just feels like this is one of those moments where they'd like to see other people for a minute and then they end up back together. Like Chris Jones with the Chiefs makes too much sense to me.
Right. I think it's funny because I know we considered doing a version of this game where it was percentage likelihood that each player was going to stay. And to me, Chris Jones was I guess a 67% chance he was going to stay. And that's because it's kind of like last year, like you said, they like to test the waters. They like to get close. Neither side wants to budge. He sat out the first game and they lost to the Detroit Lions, who, by the way, turned out to be pretty good. But in the end, they figure it out. And both of them know, Chris Jones wants to win a Super Bowl. Your best chance at winning a Super Bowl is with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs want to win a Super Bowl. Your best chance of doing so is with Chris Jones. When you think about what you said, there are players that they can lose, but I do not view this as a Tyreek Hill situation where you can afford to let him go. I think you can't afford to let Patrick Mahomes go. You keep Travis Kelce as long as you can, and you keep Chris Jones. And after that, there are players you're probably going to have to lose. You see what you can finesse. By the way, Mahomes is giving them a better deal than most quarterbacks are giving their teams, and a deal with a lot of flexibility that they can maneuver the cap. Chris Jones doesn't go anywhere. That said, if we're going dream, send him to the Cowboys. They just need someone up the middle who can blow things up. That's been a weakness for them for years. It's kind of gone up and down. They drafted Mazi Smith last year, hoping to fix that. But if you're telling me you have Micah Parsons off the edge, you have DeMarcus Lawrence on the other end, and you have Chris Jones blowing up the middle, I don't know how. It doesn't even matter who your defensive coordinator is. Oh, and by the way, you have Mike Zimmer scheming him up. Get a guy like that, and I think that can put the Cowboys over the top. It's not going to happen, but I think Cowboys, Eagles, those NFC East teams definitely could really use him, and I think he would have a lot of personal success there.
Yeah, that's a great call by you. You say Cowboys, and I say, that's the sort of thing that super dream team we'd all have our eyes on. L'Jarius Sneed, corner for Kansas City, obviously belongs in Vegas. He just won a Super Bowl there. Now he goes back to Vegas where he starts for my beloved Raiders. This seems simple. The Raiders need help at corner. L'Jarius Sneed, by signing him over there, it makes one of their arch rivals weaker at a key position. And he goes from having Chris Jones blow everything up in front of him, which helps, to having Max Crosby do it. L'Jarius Sneed, not only do I think he should go, I think the Raiders will be aggressive in trying to figure out a way to bring L'Jarius Sneed over if he's not franchised and isn't at all attainable. So there we go. L'Jarius Sneed to the Raiders, make it happen.
I'll send him to Seattle. I think they've already got some really good young corners. And why don't we just pack it there? To have them just be, it's not exactly Legion of Boom based on the positions, but why don't we just have them have the best secondary in the league, see what they can do. You have that then when you're going against your conference, or you're going against Kyle Shanahan, you have all these corners who are going to mess it up. You're going against Sean McVay, same thing. I'm sending him to Seattle to give them a chance in the NFC West.
Yeah, I like, and Seattle's going to, this is sort of a massive rebuild for Seattle on the defensive side of the ball. So I like that a lot. Baker Mayfield, I talked to him at the Super Bowl, and I asked him what was different this year. And what I thought was interesting was he was pretty transparent about the pressure that he felt in Cleveland, what it meant to have to be everything to everybody in that organization, the outside noise that you couldn't help but feel because of the expectations, and the difference in Tampa, where he just came in and was sort of allowed to be himself in a system that already existed. It resonated so much with me that I just think, not only do I think he will stay in Tampa, I want him to stay in Tampa. The version of Baker Mayfield I talked to in Vegas was one that was very comfortable and happy. And you could see that. And I don't think there's any amount of money that the difference in whatever he would get paid somewhere else that would be worth adding that extra stress. So I keep Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think my thing with Baker in Tampa is that if you're Tampa, you should want him again because he played really well. You thought you were looking for a quarterback. You thought he was a bridge. He totally surpassed your expectations. And having that answer to quarterback, it's not about having a top 5. You have a top 15 quarterback. It's a pretty big deal in any division, and especially in a division that has a lot of room for opportunity. And then if you're another team in the league, well, Baker stayed healthy, but the issue in the other years is he wasn't. So can he stay healthy again? Oh, by the way, Dave Canales isn't there anymore. So with a new OC, can he still do it? And I think almost I wonder if they would franchise tag him, because if you franchise tag Baker, you as the Buccaneers and everybody else, for Baker, he can go bet on himself, which he's already done, and he's done very well last year. If you're the Buccaneers, you're not yet committing to him long-term, but you're paying him high. I don't know what the franchise tag will be, but it'll be a lot more than he made this year. And so I think that's kind of a win-win of Baker showing whether he can stay healthy and produce with a different offensive coordinator at that level back-to-back years.
All right, now we go to the other Josh. I feel bad. What are the chances that you'd be named Josh Allen? You'd be picked high in the NFL draft. You'd be a superstar at your position, and your whole career you'd be the other. Josh Allen. I'm just saying, Josh Allen, sack master from Jacksonville. To me, you mentioned a team earlier that I think needs him. That's the Eagles. The Eagles got to find a way to get after the quarterback. They did not do it last year. I think their sack number off the top of my head dropped from 72 years ago to 43, if I remember it correctly, last year. So you're talking about a massive drop off. They couldn't get pressure across the defensive line. New coordinator comes in. Maybe that fixes some of it. But I think all of these defensive linemen, Josh Allen, Brian Burns, they're all in play for the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to be aggressive, but I also like the idea of them being like, we all know they got huge, mammoth, like giant men in the middle, but they need some help getting after the quarterback. So I like Josh Allen for the Eagles.
I'm sending him to the Atlanta Falcons. I think you have Raheem Morris scheming up this defense now. They were last in the league in pass rush win rate last year. They need some help, and they also have a lot of strong pieces on offense. Like, get yourself a couple strong defenses. And I also trust that if Atlanta gets him, like, look at the guys that they got last year on that defense. Look at the moves they made. I mean, Jesse Bates was such a great move. I think that we can trust them to get it right again.
All right, so next up, T. Higgins, wide receiver. This one's easy. If I'm just putting him wherever I want, I'm sending T to Jacksonville, where he reunites with college teammate Trevor Lawrence, because I just like college quarterbacks and college wide receivers hanging out together. I feel like there's a nice little bond to it. I tried to sucker Trevor Lawrence into breaking all the rules and openly recruiting T. He wouldn't take the bait. But yeah, I like T. Higgins only because that would put ETN and Trevor Lawrence and T. Higgins all together. So you basically have like Clemson NFL right there. I like that. So a fun story for T. Higgins.
Okay, I know that this is a little unrealistic, but can we send T to Kansas City? Can we give him to Patrick Mahomes? Like, Patrick Mahomes deserves him after this year. I know.
Deserves it. While he just weighs his hand down with more Super Bowl rings, and he deserves a better wide receiver. Good Lord. Go ahead.
Okay, how about this? If Travis Kelce retires, which I don't think he's going to, but when we asked him after the Super Bowl, he was not willing to confirm that he would be back in the way that Andy Reid was like, yeah, sure, I am coming back. What if Travis Kelce's out? Then would you give Patrick Mahomes T. Higgins?
No, I don't. I think Patrick Mahomes has had. I can't say.
How do you really feel?
Like, Patrick Mahomes has all the hardware he needs at this point. He doesn't need any more. Like, if he goes the rest of his career and doesn't win another Super Bowl, he's still one of the all-time greats. He's still one of the greatest to ever do it. He still has a whole mantle full of trophies. It's time to share. Okay, I get that.
Why
you're
don't you
the kid.
Want the NFL to be fun? To you, fun is parody. It's not chasing greatness, and it's not allowing great quarterbacks to be able to just have like insane highlights every week.
No, look, I'm all in for that. If he plays in the NFC, just get him out of there. Fine. If you know what? T. Higgins can go to the Chiefs if the Chiefs trade Patrick Mahomes to anybody in the NFC, so I don't have to watch it twice a year. Like, this is purely my own.
Your Raiders
yes. There's never going to be a period.
I don't know why that didn't catch on initially. I was like, why are you so against watching greatness?
Yeah, I'm against watching
because you have to play it twice a year.
And
if I remember
hard
correctly,
for the Chiefs. Come on.
If I remember correctly, your team is going to have a Patrick Mahomes plan.
Yeah. The plan on Patrick Mahomes' day is just to hang on for dear life and hope to God. It's like a rodeo. You're hoping you can get to 8 seconds, but there's no promises. That's the real Mahomes plan. All right. Now that you've given me more reason to drink on Sundays, Brian Burns, defensive lineman extraordinaire. It looked like he was going to try and get his way out of Carolina a couple of times. If I'm making a dream scenario for him, honestly, like the team we haven't mentioned yet that I think would have been a good fit also for T. Higgins as I look back. Brian Burns to the Patriots. Like, the Patriots need a complete influx of talent at this point. Like, the Patriots are not good. And this is no longer about Belichick and Brady. Like, now we can close that whole chapter of discussion and ask ourselves, moving forward, what makes the Patriots very good? I think the Patriots have need at almost every position on the field. And I think the Patriots are going to have to be very aggressive at how to figure out how to be more talented quickly, because right now they're left behind compared to the Bills, compared to the Dolphins, compared even to the Jets. I think clearly right now the Patriots are a bottom feeder in the AFC for the foreseeable future. Go out and get you somebody that can help.
I definitely think you make a compelling argument, and I think Gerard Mayo would also be very happy if your argument comes true. I'm saying, like, what if we get him to Chicago, just load up the Chicago defense that had a lot of promise, and just continue the Carolina-Chicago situation? You might be a little afraid because the last time you made a trade with Chicago, it did not go well for you, but like, hey, they might have a little bit of capital. They might have something they can give you back, maybe something that you gave them. It's sort of like a little gift exchange situation, like send them to Chicago.
Look, I don't mind that. Like Chicago's got, yet again, it feels like Chicago has money to do some things. So let's see what they can do with it. All right. Christian Wilkins comes up next on our list. And I'm surprised he's so low on the list. Celebrity matchmaker here again. I'm going to just take, because look, my beloved Raiders have some needs. I know that they don't have a ton of money to be able to do all of this, but I'm putting Wilkins right there next to Max Crosby. Now, all of a sudden I've got L'Jarius Sneed, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. Bam. That's how you get yourself into the playoffs, right? Doesn't matter who's playing. Like you and I might be splitting snaps at quarterback, but still at least you give yourself a fighting chance there. I like Christian Wilkins. By the way, I wish that the Dolphins were in a financial situation to keep him. It'll be interesting to see if they can, because I think he's a great fit where he is, and it's very good. But if he's going somewhere else, I'll put him with my beloved Raiders.
I'm curious, if you're the Dolphins, do you worry that like he played great already and it wasn't enough on defense? It wasn't enough to keep your coordinator there. It wasn't enough to stop teams. Like, how much do you worry about that?
I think you worry a lot about that. But this is where this is what becomes always difficult in this conversation. Like, where's the line between having great players and getting great results, right? So
right.
I think that across the board becomes so difficult because there are several teams. Like, if you're the Vikings, what are you doing right now if you can't figure out your quarterback situation with the fact that you have one of the 2 or 3 best wide receivers in the league? Like, that's not going to be enough to win you games, but you also can't just let him walk, right? Like, so I think that's the really hard thing about every position other than quarterback is greatness doesn't necessarily equate wins from individual positions.
Yeah, I think that I'm sending Christian Wilkins to Washington. I think that the Commanders got rid of some defensive linemen. They now have a defensive-minded coach who's going to need some guys and who also has like a defensive line first background. Obviously, he's been a coordinator. Obviously, Dan Quinn's been a head coach, but he needs guys who can just go blow things up. And he also really values character. He really values team leadership. And I think Christian Wilkins has always been that type of guy. And I think you bring Christian Wilkins into that room and he's the type of guy who could just sort of like, Dan gives them the message and Christian gets everyone to do it. Like, you need it to be a players up mentality. And I think that the Commanders have room to desire in terms of having that roster presence.
I love that. That's a really good fit by you. Antoine Winfield Jr., safety, comes up next on the list. I would put him with the Rams because the Rams defensive secondary was just not good. I was just working on some stuff for Yahoo that's going to be out there about different teams and their one big thing that they're looking at this offseason. And the one big thing the Rams need to address is their defense, right? They've got some issues. So I put Winfield in LA and I continue to shore up like, well, here's what we know. Sean McVay is going to be able to turn anybody into a superstar on the offensive side of the ball. And they do a great job drafting over there too. So they can put that energy and money into Winfield Jr., who's an immediate impact player for the Rams.
I'm sending Antoine Winfield to the Giants. I want to pair him with Xavier McKinney, pair him with a couple of other really strong players. You've got your guys up front. Now you'll have them in the back. And I think that like if you want to stop the Cowboys offense, if you want to stop the Eagles offense, you need a little bit more firepower, help sort of muddy that backfield so that Jalen Hurts makes mistakes, Dak Prescott makes mistakes. And I think he could really help the Giants.
All right. So Tyron Smith is next on our list. And this is kind of funny to me because frankly, I've been saying this all year with you, but like there aren't 32 starting caliber offensive tackles in the NFL right now, right? Like there just aren't. So like it is so rare that somebody that can play comes out. I mean, look, I'd love to put him almost anywhere, but we do know that Kansas City's offensive line had some needs. So even though I don't want to help the Chiefs, bring in an offensive lineman.
Wow, hypocrite alert. Do we have like a hypocrite alarm we could sound over here?
I'm trying to be professional.
Don't give them T. Higgins. No. Give them Tyron Smith.
I'm trying to be professional. I'm trying to, I'm trying to be somewhat professional as okay, I got no excuse for it. If he could go anywhere else, that's like, I just think Kansas City, that feels real because that's such a need for the Chiefs right now. So I can't let my desire for the Chiefs to implode outweigh the fact that it makes all the sense in the world. Like stacking the Lego bricks on this one, it builds a castle when he's with the Chiefs.
Okay, I think that Tyron Smith is going to have a decision to make, and it's does he want to max out his earnings or does he want to stay with the Cowboys? I think that he's been very happy there. He's been there for a while. They've stuck with him through injuries. He also gave them a massive discount because he signed such a long deal when he signed it that it quickly became below market rate. And he played really well last year. But you also have to remember that even though he played well last year, he played 13 games, and I'll give him that. That at 33 years old. He turned 33 during the season. He was playing 13 games. But in 2022, he was healthy for 4. In 2021, he was healthy for 11. In 2020, he was healthy for 2 before he had season-ending surgery. And I think the Cowboys cannot afford to break the bank for him or even really give him like market average salary. I think that they would have to need some sort of like slightly below market, maybe average at best salary to justify keeping him around. I think that the Cowboys probably need to look to the draft to the offensive line. I think they should make it a premium. Last year when they took Mozzie Smith in the first round, they were looking at Syracuse's Matthew Bergeron, and they did not take him. And I think that that was something that there were times when Dak's protection was really breaking down. But I think that the Cowboys for a while were differentiating themselves by being an outstanding offensive line. That was what they had different in a league of parity. And I think that they do need to invest more than they have, but I don't think that they can rely on Tyron Smith given where they're at.
All right, let's do one more. Even though he's not actually a free agent, Russell Wilson is likely to be on the move. So Russell Wilson, I personally would put on the New England Patriots. Everybody keeps saying the Steelers, and I get why. But here's the thing. Even if the Patriots stay at 3 and draft a quarterback, I think the Patriots are a viable candidate to try and trade down. The more I keep hearing that, the more I wonder if somebody's going to give up a king's ransom. And like I said earlier, they need talent all over the place. So if you're Russ, like, look, if they draft a quarterback, you might want to give that person a little bit of time to develop while the roster gets better. If you don't draft a quarterback, Russ is better than Mac Jones. Mac Jones is not good. So give yourself the opportunity to at least bring Russ in, and he can be Russ in that New England locker room, and it works. I don't think his personality works in every locker room, but I think if you're going into New England, that's probably one where it's like, hey, they can all roll their eyes and get behind Russ. So I think Russ to the Patriots makes sense.
Okay, I really like that your point about the Patriot way and Russ, like both of those could work. I do think that it's a little bit hinging upon Bill Belichick's Patriot way. And I think Jerod Mayo does not want to have that same sort of Patriot way. And so I think that that'll be interesting to see. Does it still work as well in the Jerod Mayo era? And it's really too soon to tell. I'm wondering, when I look at the Minnesota Vikings, like, yeah, they need a quarterback. They're not going to keep Kirk Cousins, it seems, and they're not drafting until 11. Could they move up? Sure, they could. And I had conversations with their general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, a couple years ago about sort of the championship talent threshold that you need and what you need to do to get the Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady who could win you repeated Super Bowls. But I think when I look at what Kevin O'Connell did with Josh Dobbs, when I look at what he did with all of these different quarterbacks last year, I think that Kevin O'Connell, one, is extremely easy to get along with. And so, like, you take the Sean Payton problems, like, yeah, Sean Payton is notoriously not easy to get along with, very good at his job, but also very hard to get along with. And you put Russ in a situation where he has a lot left in the tank. You're putting with Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. You've got a defense that can help support you. You're going against a division that is a little bit different than the one, as you well know, that he was going against in Denver. And I think that there could be a lot of potential. I know you have Detroit in that division, but I think that you put him in Minnesota and they should definitely be a playoff team. The question is just how far they go.
I actually like that a lot, especially because it does take a minute to pick up that O'Connell offense, right? So bringing in somebody that has a lot of experience makes sense. I think we just made matches for the ages. Like I want to say maybe some of our best matchmaking work. I feel like we figured it all out. And now when free agency starts in a couple of weeks, there's no need to even pay attention. Just come back and reference this and be like, did we predict, the proper perfect match? Because whatever is out there won't be as good as what we just did, especially all the Raiders moves, just FYI.
Especially the Raiders moves. No, I mean, the way I look at matchmaking is that I like to tell my friends, if there are two good people who I think might have something in common, this is what one of my friends asked me, like, hey, do you think I should get set up with so-and-so? I'm like, I think you're great. I think you guys have to decide if you're compatible. So I think what we're doing here is we're saying, like, hey, you guys should really think about this. Go out on a date, meet up at the combine, find your spot, have these conversations. Then you can decide. But like, we see something in you. We see the potential. We see the common threads, the common values, that shared foundation that you could build. Now you go take it and make something beautiful out of it.
Are you ready for the chaos known as Indy next week?
Can you ever be ready for the chaos known as Indy next week?
No, you don't strike me as the type that's like,
question.
Like, are we eating the spicy shrimp cocktail sauce? Like, why does everybody always have to eat the spicy shrimp cocktail sauce on TV?
And tweet about it, right? The funny thing is, I'm like obsessed with ginger. So like spicy, like that type of strong stuff, I'm all for, but I don't eat shrimp. So I will not be having the shrimp cocktails, but I do tend to stay pretty late at Prime. I actually shout out to Lisa, is the general manager of Prime Steakhouse, which is where everybody stays super late. And she's figured out the system of look, you're not supposed to keep a place open after 2:00 in the morning in Indianapolis, but she'll close the curtains, sort of have this opportunity for people to be there. Just don't do anything stupid. And if she were to get a ticket, it would be less expensive than the amount of money she's able to make after 2:00 in the morning at Prime. And her other brilliant move, this is a pro Lisa from Prime podcast. Her other brilliant move is she knows that people get hungry at the end of the night, but she's not going to reopen her kitchen from the steakhouse 6 hours after she closed it. So they put out a big old box of Uncrustables, multiple flavors. And that way they have something ready to go. It's actual sustenance to help people sober up who are drinking. And it's just really good news. So shout out to Lisa from Prime.
Are we grape or strawberry with our Uncrustables?
Again, I can't have Uncrustables. I can't have gluten, so I'm so the wrong person to ask.
Do they not make it? They don't make a gluten-free version of the Uncrustable?
Not yet. That might be our next business opportunity. But I do think I just think that it's brilliant. You don't need to get some people something crazy. You don't need to make them a steak in the morning. It's not what they want. They want pizza. They want Uncrustables. She's got it down. She even had a plan if they were going to move the combine out of Indy to do a pop-up Prime wherever it happens.
My God.
I don't know if this is really boring to everyone who listens or if this is great behind the scenes, but I just think it's fantastic.
This is spectacular. And, Stone will probably just cut all this out anyway. Gluten-free reminds me, have you ever had the gluten-free mini nothing bundt cakes?
No.
Okay, so it's a chain called Nothing Bundt Cake.
Yeah.
And they're the mini bundt cakes. And they make little chocolate chip bundt cakes that are gluten-free, and it has the cream cheese icing on it. Tastes just, it is,
Whoa.
I'm telling you, if you did not know that it was gluten-free, you wouldn't know it was gluten-free, and they are delightful. They are absolutely, so I'm just telling you, as somebody that has to, I'm just have it, and then text me, just thank you. That's all you have to do is just text me thank you.
Yeah, we'll do a bundt cake review on the next pod.
One bite, you know the rules. All right. I'm back Monday with Zero Blitz, obviously hanging out. Follow us on social media at Jason Fitz, at Jori Epstein, at SJ Rochelle Stone behind the glass, doing God's work, trying to listen to all of our conversation about shrimp cocktail sauce. So give him some love. And don't forget to help us support Terez Paylor's legacy. All you got to do is visit breakingt.com/Terez. That's breakingt, the letter T.com/Terez for the all juice tee or hoodie. You can also support the Terez Paylor scholarships at Howard U and Mizzou directly. We'll be back next Thursday from Indy. I won't be in Indy, but they'll be in Indy doing God's work at the Combine. Be sure to hang out with us then. Thanks so much for listening to us.